Oh, yeah.
He's down for 48 hours.
He said that, he said the first 48 hours of the worst, I don't think there's any way
I'm not surprised.
All right, I'm going to welcome everybody out to our city council meeting, work meeting for Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. We will start with a review of tonight's agenda. There's a couple items that the staff would like to move around if it's okay with council. First item would be to move item 3.13 and 3.14 up to just after 3.1, just after 3.1. And then they'd also like to word the representative for the item for 3.3 is not here yet, so they're asking that we move that further back down towards the end of our work meeting as well. Does the council have any issues with either one of those? No? Okay, awesome. Any other items for tonight's agenda that we want to make changes to? Okay. Any future agenda items we'd like to add?
I will cover my item, Mayor, and some updates, so.
Okay. All right, with that, then we will move on to item 3.1, new employee introductions. Travis. Nobody wants to come.
So
literally all
apparently we've hired a whole bunch of nervous people. No, I'm just kidding. We're super excited for our new employees. We've got a pretty big group, so some can come this way and then maybe swing around that back end there so everybody can get on camera. Just so you know, it's Facebook Live. This is new employees.
Keep coming.
I didn't warn them all. So swing around into this table here. So I'm gonna have Luke
You guys can come down this,
start us out here. Luke, if you want to jump on in and introduce the two new water operators, we'll have you start us out.
Yeah.
So we've got a few new employees. One wasn't able to be here this evening, but we've got two we're excited to introduce to you guys. The first one you see in the camouflage jacket there is Chris Holm. And I know it's hard to see him. And Chris has been with us for about a month.
Mike.
Where did I say Chris? I apologize, Mike.
It's okay,
It's Mike. Sorry, Mike. I blow it. So see, you guys will remember it now because I screwed up his name. And Mike has been with us for about a month.
That long, huh?
So you'd think I'd have his name now. So Mike, I could give you how we remember it in the water, but we'll leave that out. And then we've got Justin Robinson. He's been here about 4 months now. So they can both tell you a little bit about working here.
I definitely enjoy the environment and the people. I'm excited to be part of the team and I'm ready to go to work.
So, we live.
Hi, I live in Harriman. Just moved here with my wife and kid, and so we are excited to start our lives here and career as well.
We're
So,
best in there, we live.
just off the Rosecrest in Mount Ogden.
But you don't have to tell him exactly where, because we are.
Yeah.
He will show up at your door, believe me.
Oh, I can fight.
All right, Justin.
I've lived in Harriman my whole life, so it's kind of neat working for the city and seeing what we do. It's a really fun environment to work in, a lot better than the other places I've worked.
So I'm going to move on to Dennis, since Dennis is right there with the group, right? Dennis is an educated guy, so he comes to us with a bachelor's degree in Spanish education. He's got 2 master's degrees, one in facilities management and the other in public history. Prior to moving to Utah, so welcome to Utah, right? Dennis has worked in facilities management at a university in Pennsylvania. So tell us just, a little something about Harriman.
We like it. Actually, we're currently, just because it's temporary, we're in Sugar House, so we're actually move our way here.
That's a long commute.
It's a long commute. It's not my longest, ironically, but it's a long commute.
Where did you come from?
Pittsburgh.
And what are you doing for us? Because he didn't tell us.
I'm in Parks.
Oh, okay. You're in Parks. Fantastic. That's the best department, right?
And you're a Steelers fan.
All right, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you and your streets.
I don't know what to say. You've got to.
You want me to?
He's like, I'm not even going to try to remember their
Tell me
names.
what I said.
All right, so first we'll start with Ken Cannon. He's our sweeper operator. So he cares for the sweepers if it's his own. We appreciate that. Very few can say that. And so far, he hasn't said a word about being on a sweeper every day. He makes our streets look good. Ken, tell us a little bit about you and then maybe something that you enjoy working for Airman.
I retired from the Unified Police Department about a year and a half ago, worked for Chief Carr out here for a long time, 10 or 11 years. Liked it so much, I came back.
You're still cleaning up the streets.
Ironically with a different cost though.
Right?
Still clean the streets.
Well,
It seems we may need to revamp our sorting process of potential employees.
He's doing good so far. All right, Scott, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to you. So Scott Bridges, Streets Department, Streets Technician. He has a great attitude no matter what he does. Scott fits right in with the crew.
Which one's Scott? Okay.
Here, sorry, and he's excited to learn about snow removal, and he's called out to plow on Christmas at 2:45 a.m. We'll then see how excited he is. We love our streets guys plowing, but Scott, yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
Lived in Harriman for 9-10 years. Been driving by for years and wondering what it would be like to work close to home, and now I'm doing it. So it's nice to have a short commute. And love working with the streets department. Great group of guys. Ed's a nice guy. Just love working in that team environment.
So Ed's third person, he's going to show a picture because he wasn't able to be here today. so this is Zach. This is Zach Ingram. He started working in the streets department as a seasonal employee, and he does such a fantastic job for us that we moved him into a full-time streets position. He's brought certain awareness to the crew. Crew members working with Zach are inherently more attentive, which ultimately benefits the entire crew, and you've got to love his smile. So Zach is actually one of our deaf employees, and so the crews work hand in hand with him.
There's another one.
Well,
You said one of them.
And to be honest, the street department's really done a great job of making sure he understands what's going on. They put some more time, it does take some time and effort, but he's worked really hard, and he's got a great attitude. He does everything that we ask of him. We love having him on board. That's why we made him a full-time employee. So he's fantastic for us. All right, we're going to move on to Kristen. She's in our passports department. Thank you for coming on over. Okay, so out of 175 applications, she won out. She used to work for UFA and has proven to be a quick learner and tremendous asset in the passport office, as well as helping with records management. She has a fun personality and is willing to help out without being asked. Tell us a little about yourself, Kristen.
So I've lived in Riverton my whole life, and now I'm in Riverton, but really it's Harriman. Because I grew up here forever, so. So I've enjoyed, I wanted to always work close to home. I'm 3 minutes away, and it's nice to be able to be here. Being here is really nice, and I feel welcome, so.
All right, we're going to move on over to Joe. Joe Zimmerman. So he is our Trails and Open Space Coordinator. We brought him over from Mill Creek Canyon. He did a lot of trails and services up there. He's also worked for the U.S. Forest Service. Prior to that, he was also a wildland firefighter. So he's got a lot of great experience up working in trails. But tell us a little bit about you.
Been living the seasonal life for a long time. Real excited to have my first year-round job with a great city, and I'm real excited to build a whole bunch of fun mountain bike trails and hopefully give Corner Canyon a run for its money someday.
Our next one, we're going to go Caden Skinner. So he's a part-time parts runner technician for us. So he helps out with the mechanics a lot, and he's given us a little bit of mechanic experience behind him. He beat out a lot of really good candidates as well. He's a student, right? But tell us a little about you.
Yeah, so I'm a student at Salt Lake Community College going into marketing, but born and raised here, lived here my whole life, and I've seen it expand and grow, and I kind of know some people here, so I decided I wanted to be part of it, and I've had a good time the time I've been here. So.
Okay, our next one, we're gonna move on. Matt Sievert's right here. So he is our mechanic technician. So he's been working with our fleet a lot. Oh, there's Monty. Do you want to?
I was here just in case, but
sorry,
you're
go
doing
for
a great job.
Take over.
So Matt Sievert's, he's come to work with us as one of our mechanics. He's actually a fourth generation on the property that they own in Riverton. He has a wife and 4 kids, and comes to work with us with 23 years of experience with Valley Implement. It's been a great asset, really turning work orders over great. So
that's great.
Yep. So, as you said, I got a wife and 4 kids, and I'm really excited to be here. My previous life, I spent a lot of time on the road and a lot of time traveling, so I was excited to come to Harriman and have the great benefits and the stability and be able to spend some more time with my family instead of as much time in airplanes and airports and rental cars. So really looking forward to working here. And
Okay, our last one is Sheldon. Sheldon is our code enforcement officer for the city, so we're really excited to have him on board. He does have some background in planning. He's got a degree in planning, and so fits well with that department and where his experience lies. But he has experience with construction inspections, acquaintances with city regulations, knowledge of land planning, good communication skills, and a friendly personality. He's been a great fit so far for us. So, Sheldon, you want to expand?
I'd like to thank you guys, the HR department's awesome here.
Aw.
No one, wasn't forced to say that.
You've already got the job.
Exactly.
But promotions are still available.
My experience so far it's been great. Mike's, he's a great director, I guess, he's my boss. Very passionate about the city. I know he cares. Brett's been very okay to work with. Everybody here has like an open door policy, but they're here to help you. It's great. It's a great structure. Great family, I guess, to say, to work with. Simeon's been great. He's been patient. I know he's been very busy. He's still in the process, even though I don't think he thinks he is, but he's still in the process of converting over into, on the water side, but he still helps me out quite a bit. But my experience so far has been great, and I'm looking forward to spending some more time here in Harriman City.
Yeah, and Sheldon's just been with us a few weeks now.
This is my third weekend.
Yeah.
I came from Mill Creek, so.
We appreciate you letting us come out and introduce our new employees. We're excited for it. We have great applicant pools, and these are the best of the best, so we're really excited.
Happy to have you all. Very good. Welcome very much. Thank you. Now you gotta stick around for the next 4 hours to watch wrestling. No, I'm just kidding.
We are going to jump forward to 3.13 and 3.14.
I don't think we have a picture. So, you've seen this before. Wasatch has bought some property from Rosecrest. The property is subject to the Rosecrest Development Agreement. So I'm just gonna quickly outline the process, so when it comes forward, you'll understand what we're doing and why. They're bringing it up. Oh. No, that's not there.
That's pretty though, very festive.
That's very festive, but that's okay.
It's not a slide.
What do you say? That's not me.
But that is part of my presentation for a later matter. So what we're gonna do.
It's the Wasatch. We jumped ahead.
So both, we're gonna have the applicant file an application to amend the boundaries of both development agreements. And then an application to modify the PUD boundaries, because they were both subject to a PUD, if you may remember. And then we'll rezone the property and we'll adopt the design guidelines. As you know, there are no design guidelines for commercial in the Wasatch development. So that's the process we're gonna bring forward, if you have any questions.
Should be another one. This is that same commercial property.
Yep, same commercial property.
This is the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
There should be a PowerPoint associated with it.
It's all right.
Yeah,
it is all right.
so what we wanted to do was to show you what the planning commission saw tonight. So, did you send that? I know it's on there, but I saw it on Destiny.
Of course he didn't.
Oh, it's froze.
Oh, that's because you tried to touch it. No, I'm just kidding.
So the purpose of this is because we only have one planning city council in November and one in December, we just wanted to keep you up to date on what's happening with this because this project is going through the planning commission right now. We just want to make sure that you're seeing, you're being kept up to date on it. And then we had one last issue with the. It's dying.
There was judgment happening, I'm just gonna say.
I used to know right. Whatever.
We're gonna have to shut off.
I feel like that computer in outer space.
Yeah.
That's the iPad. Oh, is that his screen? Did they give you a bad service?
So the day we get to retire, we don't have technology.
The computer is, the tablet?
Yeah, it's the tablet. That's why I have one's better.
It's interesting when new officers have their computers are down, they're like, I can't work with this. I don't know what to do. Here's a pen.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, I know what this is. I need a keyboard. I don't know what to do. We're gonna write.
I'd like to get a pen.
Here? Yeah, what?
My son Alan, and his tablet itself, because I think we had issues with his tablet last time.
Right.
So we could not go back to Jake Destiny. I told him I want the same one, and he's like, wow. You're too far right, but it was just, well, I have to have it. He was just like,
It's just flabbergasted.
Ever, like half an hour, but you're right up. Like insult to injury if you gotta wait 30 minutes.
You're gonna have to hand that to.
Now you do.
He's like,
Well,
where are you going next? He's like, that's the very questions I did this year.
Do you know why? Because your tire was, that's where they transport a lot of filth, spare tires. So if it was dangling, they're probably thinking,
Shipment has she got up in there?
Now this all makes sense to me, because I was like, you rely on it too much. He asked me if he had to get out of the car and come, because my son was in the truck. He was like, are you sure you're okay? And I'm like, yeah.
She's the perfect
He was worried about like.
Hey, here's what's, until we get this lined up, Mike, we wanna talk about
like screws and bolts that have.
2.8, just simply minutes, part of the conversation.
Yes.
You have over that?
That's why there's a lot of questions.
We
3.8.
have two regular planning commission members who need to be considered for reappointment. Chris Berbert and Andrea Bradford. We included their names in your memo in your packet. We also are anticipating Colby Oliverson as an alternate. Hasn't moved from our city yet, but I think by the end of the month he will have moved from Harriman. So that would have a vacancy as an alternate. I've also heard from Heather Garcia, who is currently an alternate, and she would like to be considered as a potential appointment, as a regular member of the planning commission. So we're just, asking for direction from the council. This is just for discussion only. How do you want, us to proceed as preparing names for your consideration at a future meeting?
Well, I think obviously Chris is, he's the current chair, he's been involved, and I think he's been doing a great job, and I have no issues with Chris being reappointed. I actually, at our last combined meeting, I know Andrea wasn't there, and so I actually did have just the thought in my play, I just didn't know if was she just not able to attend that night, or what is the current status of Andrea and her desire to serve?
They both said that they have a desire to continue serving, and Andrea's attendance has been similar to other commission members. Perhaps not as vocal as some commission members, but she has been a regular attendee and participant.
But right now you just have the two
regular members that require reappointment, right?
And those two have been the two currently serving in those
Yes.
full appointment spots?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd agree, I have no issues with that, and I think that of all roles, and we've chatted about this many times, the longevity is so important because the learning curve is so high. So if there's a willingness to serve, and they're putting in the time and they've gotten the training and all of those things, then I am always gonna be, I'll look for another meeting, I am gonna be supportive every time you bring, a planning
For
commission.
the rest of your
appointment.
term.
For the rest of my term, I'm supportive of this.
Well, and I'll echo what Nicole just said. I actually had a conversation recently, with a developer, that's been in the community doing some things, and he just made a comment that there actually has been quite a bit of turnover, over the last couple of years in terms of the planning commission, to where we have, I think, lost a little bit of that institutional knowledge that's been there, and we have some great people that are serving there, but recognize that it takes, I was on the planning commission for several years before I began to feel slightly comfortable with the process and the knowledge of those things, so it's not something that happens overnight, and I think that consistency with those people that have been there and continue to have a desire to serve there, should warrant a reappointment.
Okay. Our next reappointments are scheduled right now. The alternates serve for 1 year, subject to reappointment by the council, so we will have some reappointments in May for you to consider. And then regular members, we won't have any reappointments due until 2021, so we won't have any regular appointments next year. And so we can, and our alternates certainly do participate. There is a need to have those alternates. We can have up to 3. So if you would like, we can look for some qualified candidates to fill that vacancy once that becomes available.
These reappointments, just for the record, are for how long, Michael?
Again, regular is for 3 years, and then alternates are for 1 year.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've got the direction I need,
So
so thank you.
you got the direction on the alternates then, with that?
So it sounds like you want me to see if we can find a third
Because
alternate.
again, just the depth of training, the
Oh,
more
yeah.
training, if they're committed to kind of serving on a long-term capacity, then getting that training, not only with formalized training, but also just being in the wings and seeing what's happening is invaluable. So if they're willing,
Would the council like to participate in the selection process of that alternate member?
Or you want us-
Do you wanna look at maybe just a couple of biographies?
The last time we did the process, we allowed the planning and two others to be involved, narrow it down, and then reached out to you and see if a couple of you want to be a part of the interview process. Do you like that format? You want to be involved in?
I like the format. Again, obviously, it's just gonna come down to timing and availability
I
on
think
those
you have
final.
to out your time, so.
I also like though that you did send us your, everything that they were sending you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was really important for us to be able to read through that, look at those, understand who's applying, those type of things.
Okay.
What'd you say again? I want to make sure I'm clear.
You sent us their application.
We sent a packet of materials of the applicants.
Okay, so you want to be involved in the very beginning of any applicants
Well,
reviewing them?
Obviously, I think it last time you kind of
Narrowed it down.
narrowed it down.
Yeah.
to what
Yeah, that's
it
what I said. We narrowed it down and we gave you what we felt like was the one who was going to interview and then gave you those packets.
Yeah, that's what that's all I'm
For the
saying.
interview process, you get the packet, their background, and then when you come in to interview, you have the background knowledge of what they're.
Yeah, and whether we can participate in the interviews or not, at least we're happy because that information was really helpful.
That's why I just caution on this. You want to pack, we're good now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was 3.8.
Okay, we have balloons then? Wendy, can you talk about the
They're all
the tour of Utah 3.5?
They're presentation.
Okay, never mind. I was wondering.
What about city manager updates?
We can get through some of them. There's about 10, so no, would be the answer.
Do you have a?
It's pretty, about the question, it should be pretty short, right?
I have one that, we need to put on the agenda for next meeting, the Sapphire Sewer Board, because Clint was appointed and finished the term of Mayor Freeman. That's coming due, it has to be done by a date in December. I'm looking for direction on the agenda for December to reappoint Clint for another, term on that, or to look at reappointing someone else.
Clint, do you wanna?
I have absolutely no issue with continuing to serve there. I think that's, as far as, excuse me. Again, we talked about consistency just a minute ago. I think consistency where we can do, with our partners in those respects is helpful. Like anything, it takes time to get up to speed on those issues. I've enjoyed my time there at the sewer board, and I'm very happy to continue serving in that capacity.
I'm supportive of keeping you there, and if you want.
So I'll reach out to Craig White, the administrator, also expressed that feels like Clint's just got there and got his feet good and grounded, that he's starting to be very valuable to him as a board member, so. I'll have, me and Jackie will get that prepared with.
My wife's still waiting for me to bring some value to that.
So we got one on CM updates, but the rest of it, we want to take a little more time, in conversation, so we wanna, we cover Houston.
Yeah, Houston, okay, so, I've got the nods from enough council members to move forward. We've sent the offer letter to, one property owner that was holding out. We've been trying to reach out to him all day, haven't heard back from him. I anticipate we'll get that's good, he'll sign it and we'll be good to go. Regardless, we are finalizing the plans and we're getting the bid documents already. We're looking to go out to bid in January, and then it'll take a couple months to get the bid selected and get all the bonds in place. And then they'll probably build that. We talked about waiting until school was out, but looking at it, I think we can work it out where we can get it done with school in place, with school going on and not have an issue. There's a possibility we could pave during spring break or something.
How we coming on the sidewalk on the north side of that street?
That, the fence is in,
Fence on the flats and.
and so it's gonna happen. We're just, I think
Before
we've got the plans
school
getting finalized on that. We didn't have to do too much on plans, so we're just doing them in-house. But, we're just gonna get the 3 bids, cause it's not gonna be enough to have to go out to a formal bid. And so I'm anticipating we'll get that done in the next couple of weeks.
Can you give us an update on Main Street?
Can I ask one quick question on Houston? That agreement that was sent, was there any type of a deadline communicated when we'd like to see that back? Because again, my desire is that we don't let this continue to wane and drag, that we keep the process moving on our side to make sure that we have everything in place when it's time to go.
We didn't give a deadline. We just said, when this is ready, we'll come out and have you sign it right away. So we can add a deadline. We can go forward without it though. So we can either have it or not. I don't know if it's that critical. It's not as critical as the other negotiations we had. The only issue that would come up is if he came back and asked for more. If he came back and asked for more, then I would come back to you. But I'm confident that we'll get that signature.
Well,
within the next.
for me, let me just say, I'm not willing to give any more if there is that type of a request. I think we've been more than understanding in this issue and doing what we need to resolve it. So if there is a request for more, my answer, regardless of what it is, would be no.
So if there's a request for more, I would imagine our coming back to you would be as a resolution to condemn.
Yes.
Yes, but again, my point in bringing this up is that, again, I don't want that to drag on and on and on. And if by some stretch, which we certainly don't think it will and hope that it won't go to that point, it does, I would rather know that much sooner than later by having some type of a date in place to allow us to not deal with that uncertainty that we've dealt with for so long on this project.
And maybe the key is just to make sure, work with John, so we know that timeline, that if we wanna pay spring break, we would have to go through that process by this.
And we could pay it without this.
That's right.
So it's not gonna hold up the project, but it could hold up a piece of sidewalk.
A piece of sidewalk.
That's all it holds.
And again, I think we just need to communicate very clearly that we've done everything that we've been asked to do. And our expectation is now that we can get that signature and put this thing completely to bed.
So our next meeting is December 11th, and if that's a ways away still, I should get resolution before then. But if it looks like things are going into a week or 2 weeks, I'll send an email out through Brett to come to you guys.
Please.
Let you know what's going on.
But hopefully December 11th, I'm able to say it's all good, we're ready to go, and then we don't talk about it until it's paid.
We have a party on the street.
If we want to.
We got a big ribbon cutting, this is gonna parade, we're gonna have, it's gonna be floats, it's gonna be something.
Sherry gets to be the lead.
The barbecue.
It'll be a grand market too.
Food truck. Just go ahead and do.
And then for Main Street, the contractor's been working to get his subcontractor out to do the collars around the valves and the manholes. They've had a tough time getting them out. They told them in a meeting today that they'd be out tomorrow to do it. Guaranteed it. So we need 3 days for that to cure. And then Monday, we're scheduled to do some restriping. You'll see a post. I think my staff's been working with Tammy on getting the post out for that. We're gonna reconfigure the intersection down here at Main and Harriman Boulevard. So instead of 2 rights onto Main, there's gonna be a left turn, a straight, and a right.
So many people didn't turn there for a while. No, I'm gonna be one of those.
We've got a message board that's gonna go up on Monday that says new traffic pattern, be aware. It's out there now, we're gonna put the date on it. And then Tuesday, we're hoping to open that road sometime during the day, provided we get the concrete cure and all the striping done. So, it'll be a good opening, and it's scheduled to snow that day, so.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I bet the traffic backs up there though, I bet that's against the traffic. Cause only one right turn will be compounding. Anyway, that's my negative point, sorry.
The dual rights have been fantastic.
Way fantastic.
I see a lot more traffic in that intersection in the mornings lately.
Oh, yeah.
Between 7 and 7:30, there's a lot more traffic there. People are starting to use it for sure.
Thank you.
That's my thing. Alright, are we finally ready to move on to 13 and 14?
We're good. Okay, Mike.
Alright, so we were at 13 and 14, we had a brief discussion about it.
So actually, Brent's gonna do a review of this, yeah.
What am I talking about?
Just-
I thought
just what
John
was-
was gonna talk first.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is, I'll stand up. I'll stand up. We just wanna keep you guys, and maybe John already said this, but I'll say it again. Up to speed with what the planning commission has seen, so this is the same presentation that the planning commission got last week. I'm gonna just very quickly go through it with you, if you can email it to you, you can what to do. They have not changed their design guidelines from what you saw a couple weeks ago at the joint meeting. And again, I can email those to you, because you kind of got hard copies, you probably didn't get emails, so. They will be making changes, probably tomorrow I'll get new ones, so we'll send out the new ones when we get the new design guidelines. We are planning on this being on planning commission, next week, the site plan, for them to look at that some more, so. Again, site plan, the one thing they wanted to show the planning commission was how the site drops from Mountain View up to the road. If you wanna go to the next one, just to give you an idea of the grade that goes across the site. Because the planning commission and the council had some questions about how is it connected with the sidewalks and stuff like that, and just to understand, there are some challenges with the grading on this site for sure. Again, the site plan hasn't changed from what it's been for the last several months. Just the one residential component, and then the rest of it, the office, hotel, and the retail spaces.
Go back and just show them the connectivity of the sidewalk. So you can see the.
Oh. The sidewalk connected.
Do you need a laser?
That
That was a big deal to the planning commission.
It was a big deal to the planning commission.
And then also all the way around, to do the asphalt path with that side.
And we did ask him to add that, because there is, again, there is the asphalt path along the road here, sidewalk here, and then they show how it, it connects. The planning commission talked about, will it be lit, will we do maybe lit bollards, how are we gonna make it? Because of the anticipation is getting a lot of people parking here, walking over to the stadium, so we just wanna make sure that pathway is.
So, I have one question. Are those residential units right there?
No,
Those are garages.
Okay.
They're using the garages to kind of as retaining,
So
yeah.
that's the back of those garages, not
Exactly.
the driveway
Yep.
to somebody's house?
Nope,
Okay.
nope,
I'm
these
way
are
more
the
okay with
only
that.
units there.
All
Yeah,
right.
those are garages, and then again, they're using the garages on that side to make up the grade on that side.
Will you go back to the grade slide
Of
just for
course.
1 second? Just, it's really hard to see. Remind me, are we talking
So,
like 40,
here's-
50 feet? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's total 60 feet tall.
60 feet?
There you go. So here's Mountain View, so yeah, parking structure, drop down, that'd be the residential.
Professional offices.
Oh yeah, office, and then kind of the commercial down in Academy down there, so. You can see how it drops there.
If you go back one sheet, you can see where they put the cross sections through. So this, the A and the B show
Yeah,
where it's
where-
cutting through.
Go, next one. This is just to show, again, how, sidewalks, park strips, bicycle paths. Again, this has been the planning commission's, one of their biggest, things that they've been talking about. Cause the pedestrian connection is important through here, so. Street furniture, again, lighting, the planning commission talked about all of that, so. Oh, again, this one shows the walkway, and amenities. So this one, they were talking about, entry features here at the entrances, some kind of, splash pad playground, some kind of amenity here, another amenity over here by the hotel, so just kind of showing, how these are little, like, outdoor patios for these restaurants, just different amenities that they're laying out.
Brendan, will you bring up again, excuse me, the discussion with planning commission and the bollards and the walk path?
We talked about that. You don't remember?
So I do remember,
Okay.
I'm trying to clarify because I don't think everyone's on the same page, but what we're looking at is a study to understand how many people are really using the parking structure to go to a reality game. I don't envision this being like you see out in Sandy after 30,000 people are leaving one stadium and the sidewalks are just mass amounts of people. We have a lot of parking over the training facility already. This is supplemental and it will help, but we've got a 6-foot meandering sidewalk through there that'll have a 2-foot park strip, so it gets people off of the road, and we're trying to get away from putting bollards all the way down that. We just think it's not gonna be
Oh, yeah, we're not,
appropriate.
yeah.
Okay, so we just wanted to anticipate the actual use, and we'll do some numbers counts to make sure that we're in line with that.
The next one. So this will be the first phase they're bringing in. This is Academy. These are the first 4 retail buildings. This is just to show the level of, landscaping, the plans that we'll get kind of as each plot comes in, and how they're bringing this in. It's not one at a time, so you kind of can get a feel for how that whole pod lays out. Again, so this would be the back of those garages right there, and just how the whole thing lays out there with the landscaping, and again, walls along the road too.
And one of the things you can see is they terrace the landscaping. So you see
Yeah.
it terraced, and then each row has a little bit of landscaping on it, so it's not just dark, but it gives kind of a little bit of character you're just not wiping out things with the rigid walls. It's more interesting than that.
What's the approximate square footage of each of those buildings?
6 to 8.
6,000 to 8,000?
This is, I won't try to speak for their architect, but again, this was just to show some different seating ideas, different, concrete styles, just a lot of different things they're talking about doing in here to make it interesting. Again, maybe seating here, patio here, different ideas, and we'll get this level with each, kind of pod that comes in. We'll look at tying it all in, the landscaping and stuff.
And because they're private roads, they're gonna be doing the paver, or do things that across the road, so it's pedestrian with the tables and things
Picking
like that.
across,
So
yeah,
that
across
will
the
be
street and stuff.
something they'll do throughout their project, everywhere you saw them cross the road.
Like this, There's just one more. Again, they wanna do some different kind of awnings and coverings, patios next to the restaurant areas. I agree with everything.
Okay, now this is the one, they didn't go with the planning commission, we wanna talk briefly about this.
Oh, this is, one they just kind of put together to show you if there is not a parking structure, kind of how that changes. So it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see where these are hashed out, that would be parking.
It would be asphalt parking.
Yeah, so you have like these 2 buildings, but this would all be parking instead of having those 2 buildings.
So,
And part of that would be parking, all that would be taken up with parking, so just to give you an idea of, kind of what the parking structure, how that helps.
And that's the kind of thing that the legislature needs to see. When you have limited land and you have to take that large
Oh,
percentage
yeah.
for surface parking because we don't have ways in which we can build parking structures that lend themselves to economic development in short-land places. It's frustrating.
It's a heat generation thing as well too. I mean, all this black sea of asphalt
Yeah.
is just heating up, our environment, and we're trying to be responsible on that side as well. But the straight economics is that by allowing this much more density in commercial, you're gonna pay for that parking structure in less than 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So the issue that they have is they're looking to use some of the TIF and some of the financial means to help supplement this, because it's just more economical to do asphalt and pave the earth. We see that everywhere. And so we've put in a couple applications to help fund these. One of them is a TIF application that Blake put in, and it's gone to, been accepted, and we're now looking to get $5 million is what the.
It was CMAQ funding.
CMAQ.
So we've got some tough competition with some Salt Lake projects and stuff. It's the whole Wasatch Front Council. So our concept reports are due in December, and then we'll find out early next year.
The other is Tammy and I've been working with some of the legislators because the state has been funding parking structures throughout the city now and elsewhere in the state. They did one in Salt Lake, they did one at Big Cottonwood, they just are getting to fund one in Little Cottonwood Canyon. So we're asking that not all of them go on the east side, that they bring some on the west side. So we're asking for an additional $5 million from legislative. And then the third source is we have a CDA in this area. We're working with Rosecrest right now, because it was intended to pay for the infrastructure, of course, the outfall, the storm drain, all those things. And we're looking at using some of those funds as well. So we want you to be aware of what is being compiled to help fund getting these put together in the project. If we don't find a way to fund them, then it's gonna be John can answer some of the questions with that, but from what we understand, it's gonna be difficult to get these, and so we end up with more asphalt and less buildings. If you have any comments on that, you can.
And a project that's not nearly as nice because it's even up in asphalt.
that's basically it,
Yeah. That's it.
Okay, any other questions from the council?
Alright, I'll ask one quick one. What is, rough cost, what is it? What are you projecting for the parking structure for it to cost?
That one's about 16, and that gets us 6 per thousand on that office building. So one thing you can't see there is the building would literally shrink by a couple floors. And so 16 is on that one, and the other one on pot 35 is smaller. It's between 8 and 9. So between 24 or less should cover all hard costs on the project. So you're roughly 23,000 a stall is the number that we're looking at about right now.
And how many stalls in this first one anticipated?
First one's over 800, and so that's what's gonna provide parking for the professional office, the hotel, and the office building. And so that's why it's larger, because it has a bit more of a complexity to it. The other one, I believe, was around 500.
Okay.
And it's gonna be used, we're gonna try to influence also transit authority and see if there's other venues that can help participate, because there's a lot of uses in that area for that parking structure.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Good.
No, I'm not gonna say.
What?
John doesn't want Bruce to stay either.
No.
Alright, so that was 13 and 14, correct?
He wanted Bruce to leave 10 minutes.
That was 13 and 14, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we will move back to item 3.2, discussion pertaining to Harriman Code Enforcement.
So, we did a presentation a few months ago, I think it's been several months ago now, with the Planning Commission. And we asked the City Council if you would like to see a similar presentation. So Sheldon and Sydney have worked on this today, and they'll go ahead and walk through what they have to share.
Okay, so, I'm helping Sheldon out here because this has some history to it that I'm more aware of than he is.
Well, he's been here 3 weeks, he can.
Speaking of weed.
Okay, so just kind of a quick overview of what code enforcement does. The main thing is to protect property values throughout the city and to, keep the beauty of the city up. Okay, something is. There we go. Okay, so these are a few things that code enforcement typically runs into the most. Encroachments on city property, weed violations, things like that. Then we have some general sign ordinances and general violations. Code enforcement will help a little bit with storm water things, as far as mostly just keeping their eyes and ears open and then sending that over to the stormwater department for us to handle. That was a big portion of it until we got the stormwater program running. That was a big portion of what I did. So this is kind of our code enforcement process. We start out with, typically we try to touch the resident with a verbal or a door hanger, and then that moves to a courtesy notice, then a notice of violation if non-compliance, and then an administrative citation. Feel free to go ahead and stop me at any point if you guys have any questions.
I have one question, go back
Sure.
to slide, typically, because it seems like you go boom, 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 you go into citation. How long is a typical process?
That's for the next few slides.
So, slow down.
So it's no dates, so.
Yeah, so this courtesy notice, that usually takes it can take about 10 days to move into the courtesy notice process. And then the courtesy notice, once mailed, the resident has at least 10 days before we would move that up. Our practice has been to use the least amount of force as possible. Part of that is if the resident calls up and says, hey, you gave me 10 days, I understand I've got an issue, but we can resolve that in 15 days. Usually we will work with the resident on that. So, that's kind of case by case, depends on how that works. So, that's the courtesy notice, minimum of 10 days by ordinance. Then that moves to a notice of violation, and once again, that's another minimum of 10 days. And each one of these, we have a follow-up inspection that's involved with that. That creates a lot of the workload for our code enforcement officers. So then we move to administrative citation. That gives 10 days before a fee starts accruing. And at this point, notice of violation or at the courtesy notice, the resident has the right to an administrative hearing. With the administrative citation, that moves to an administrative hearing. So this is kind of a breakdown of where we've been in the last 12 months. As you can see, this is kind of where a lot of our workload is down here on signs, off-street parking, and weeds. The new PD department has been helping with the on-street parking a lot, but we still do get a lot of those concerns. A lot of the residents would rather call us than PD on their neighbors, so if they think that it's something that we can handle, they call us, so we try to help out in that way as much as possible.
Question for you,
Sure.
of those that we see on the screen, and I know we've had this conversation a little bit before, but how many of those are proactive versus complaint-based?
Signs are going to be mostly proactive. So on-street parking is either going to be mostly complaint. There was an area, over Rosecrest, Sentinel Ridge area that has been problematic, due to not enough parking in the, townhome developments. Some of those areas like that, we did do a little bit of proactive. Weed violations, was a little bit, some proactive there with like some of the larger vacant lots around. Most everything else has been pretty much, complaint based.
Can you help me understand exactly what sign violations are? Are those the
So,
builders leaving signs all over the city, correcting to the houses they want? Is that what we're looking at there?
So we're looking at a lot of those would be that. There would also be construction signs that are non-compliant. There's, you know, a few that would be also temporary signs that have been left out too long per our ordinance, things like that.
Do we find, since being that it's so high, are we finding that enforcement of these violations is actually causing any change in behavior? Or they continue to just do what they're doing regardless?
So we have had some change in behavior. It's kind of one of those, they kind of start doing a lot. We crack down, goes down. Problem is kind of plateaued. So then they kind of start doing it again until we start to notice an issue. Kind of just one of those roller coaster things.
As long as we're enforcing it, they're obeying it, but as soon as we stop, they stop as well.
Pretty much.
A lot of those signs were probably political in nature too, I'm guessing.
No comment. No. So here is cases by status. So we have our citations and active cases. So these are cases that are open within our database. And that can be, they can be open either due to the citations is some work that we need to deal with legal and just get those moved through. Active could just be a matter of needing manpower to go back out and inspect those properties and close them. Because usually what happens is we'll send out a courtesy notice and either it gets resolved and we never hear from them again, so it's just a matter of us having the time to go back through our old cases and close those out, or you know, it's something that continues to be ongoing. So this is, so these numbers are actually on I deleted that slide that had that information on it, but 625 on this, which is about the last 18 months, is where this data came from. It's not the 400 that we looked at on the previous slide, so I apologize for that. So this is how many cases we've closed out in about the last 18 months. So this is our average cases that are open per violation type. So you see tall weeds is probably one of our biggest issues. Some of those have been open for a longer duration due to one of our bigger developments that we had. Developers in town trying to work with them to get their vacant properties resolved. Signs is lower because a lot of those we just go in and we abate the problem and get them removed, get resolved in the same day. Landscaping is a little bit longer as well due to seasonality and cost involved there. We really try to work with the resident on that as much as possible. Illegal dumping is probably one of those that is due to the fact of needing to go back and inspect. A lot of those are on our trails and open space, and we have to go hike out to go do the inspections on those. So those are pretty time consuming. Any questions on those? So here's a few examples of some things that we do. So this would be an example before and after pictures of an area where a vacant lot that had a bunch of weeds, and we got the resident to mow those down. Sidewalk obstruction. As you can see, obviously, people can't walk around that truck. Did you want to comment on anything, Sheldon? Feel free to. So this is a property where we have, accumulations of things. We've been working, with this resident. Actually, this was a case that, my predecessor had, over 2 years ago that we've been working with, working with him little by little. As you can see, this picture here is probably, I think that one was about 2 years ago, or about between 2 and 18 months old. As this one here is more within the last 2 or 3 weeks. So, as you can see, the process is slow, but we do get some things done. So here we have off-street and on-street parking. So this picture here, somebody from out of town came, parked their motorhome too close to the driveway, out in the road. There's a 12-hour time limit for RVs on the road, but then they also parked their car dolly in the middle of the road. The other issue with this kind of thing is, as you can see right there, they've got their power cord out across the sidewalk, which causes a trip hazard. This one over here, the original complaint, actually, you want to address this one since it's this is been your case in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so in this situation here, I got complaints regarding parking on the lawn, multiple families living in the home, structures built on the home that weren't permitted, etc. So upon investigation, when I arrived on site, no one was parked on the lawn was there, all the structures had permits that were built. I saw no violations at all. So I didn't place a notice or anything at the residence because I found no violations. So I figured I'd give it a couple days, I'd go back, re-inspect it. So when my initial inspection was on a Thursday, I came back Monday, the lawn had been removed and textured concrete was poured in the landscaped area. So by city code, you're required to have a certain amount of space for landscaping. So 25% of it has to be live plant matter, 25% can be hard surfaces, where they've obviously exceeded that amount. So I'm working with that resident now, seeing what we can come up with to address the situation. It's obviously it's gonna be expensive for him. He's gonna have to remove concrete, to come in compliance. Plus I have to let him know that regardless, even if he did pave that and it was within code, meet code, he still could not park on that spot. It's still considered a landscaped area. So, it will take some time to get through this. The residents were very understanding. So, I'm glad it's working out well, and we're just working on a solution now. So.
Is the sidewalk there?
Yeah, the sidewalk.
So the sidewalk
garbage
is
can's
right
actually
there.
on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Is this their attempt to make their neighbors happier by not parking on the street?
Yeah, and that's what he
Was
told
that-
me. He says, you don't want to park on the street because they have quite a few cars. They do have a long RV strip down the side, which I mentioned. This is, you utilize that. He just says juggling cars in and out. This is, by code, you can't park on the street up to 24 hours in your car. You can't store a car on the streets. He said he did reach out to our offices. I wasn't sure who he spoke with. He spoke with a lady who said that he asked if he could put like a turnabout up, through the park strip there. It would require like city engineer approval, etc. More likely it wouldn't happen anyways. She told him no, and this was what the recourse he took on his own. So
then another thing that we deal with a lot is dumping on city property. This is down along one of our trails. Resident mows their lawn, just dumps it all over the fence. This is another one along that same trail where they, I believe this one they actually crossed the trail and dumped it right there. And there's a couple of issues here. Not only does it deface our open and trail space, but a lot of our open and trail space is actually part of our storm drain system. So then that becomes a storm water violation there. So then here we have this was one of those vacant properties that finally got resolved when the developer landscaped it. So this was a case that I worked on all summer basically, along with a few other properties that they own. So this is a couple of examples of sign ordinances. So this is an 8x8 sign. For a construction sign, our ordinance allows 32 square feet. That would be 64 square feet. And then we also have setback requirements that it's not in line with, because the property line is back to sidewalk. And then this one here, same thing, too large for a construction sign. That one is actually also in the clear view, so we're working on getting that.
That's the guy right there.
So,
They didn't ask me first.
we'll see that one come down tomorrow, I guess, then.
Well, an update on that.
Thanks for being here, Tom.
Actually, working with her today, they removed, one of the signs have been removed. They're working on the permitting process right now, so.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's the other thing is a lot of
I think it's a
developers
great
don't,
sign.
and builders don't realize that they do need permits, so, yeah. So this was, some pictures of, some of the sign removal that we've done. So a lot of, the directional signs that we mentioned, the mayor mentioned earlier, that were removed from the public right of way. This is actually, was a different sign than, this one here. This one here is, still being worked on because it's part of public right of way, we can't just go remove it, but this one here was in the park strip, and we, were able to remove that because then that was on public property. So then this is kind of a few, examples of some zoning violations and some, ADU, issues or accessory dwelling units. So this is an ad, I received a complaint on this property, by a neighbor, and I found this ad, on KSL for them advertising for their basement rental. This was in a residential zone, which, is not allowed, to have an ADU in it. Or accessory basement apartment, whatever you wanna call them. This is an example of a home occupation. The original complaint was that no one was living there. They did have a living quarters in the basement, they're running a daycare. We got the state involved in this one because their, ratio to adults to kids was, out of whack. But as far as being able to, they also needed a, city business license on that one. This one here is in an agricultural zone, and the resident was running an RV storage business. They actually had a Google page for it and everything, so that should be a commercial zone to run a RV storage business. Stormwater pollution prevention plan, SWIP. So this is some examples of some issues that we run into out in the community. This would be outside of the construction site of it. So we had over here, we had some concrete cutting. The wastewater is just discharging right into the storm drain. This was a commercial vehicle that was just parked and leaking oils or hydraulics right into the gutter. Ironically, this was actually a Vector truck, which is typically used to clean stuff like that up. And then this happens all the time. Not only is it create a stormwater issue, but it also creates a road obstruction and a traffic hazard. So those are kind of some things. So these we can handle two different ways, as a stormwater violation, but then also as a road obstruction. So any questions?
Yeah, I have a question on that dirt one. Is that allowed at all? Does it have to be out off of that park in a certain amount of time, or do they just have to dump it in their driveway?
It should be off the public right of way altogether.
Altogether, so they need to dump it in their driveway or
Yes.
something like that.
So.
And just FYI, cause I've had to deal with this issue before, the people that are hauling it in, they don't care.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're just gonna pull up, they're gonna dump it, and they're gonna drive away and say, it's not my problem.
And a lot of times they're not gonna take a 10-wheeler up somebody's driveway.
Yep.
Because they don't wanna
Crack
have
the
that
driveway.
liability. So you've got kind of a double-edged sword. Are you gonna put it in the road and create that problem for your client? Or are you gonna put it in the driveway with that possible liability on that? Both of them really creates a liability for them because, you know, Lehigh actually had someone hit a pile of dirt in the road last summer, so.
So then the other question I had, I think we brought it up last time, is one person enough to cover this much work?
As you can see with the duration of cases and the amount of cases that are open, still open. That's what my experience was. That was one of the reasons was workload for wanting me to move over towards the stormwater department.
Cause you were bored in code enforcement?
No, because I was overworked.
Will having the stormwater department though help alleviate some of that workload?
It will help because I was doing a lot of stormwater work. That being said, I still think that there is plenty of work to do in the on the code enforcement side of things.
Maybe give an answer without giving an answer. Good job.
Stormwater is very, very busy. Sherry, if I may. So when Sheldon came on board, and we've been so appreciative that Simeon's been doing a lot of the training for Sheldon. We're looking at what we can do to make the process a little more efficient. We're re-examining kind of when we hand off cases to legal, trying to see if we can make that be more effective as far as bringing cases to a close. We've also asked Sheldon to develop some type of a either quarterly or semi-annual report so you can start seeing the workload and understanding the caseload, help you understand whether or not it's the right time to look at that second position. We think we need to do a little more work on our end to provide that backup data for you. So we're gonna be working on that, making sure that you have that kind of information.
Thank you. From my experience now, I've been here for 3 weeks, I'm opening more cases than I'm closing out this time, so it's almost at the point where I don't know if I can, I'm sure at one point I'll get ahead, soon the winter comes, we can get some catching up there at that point, but we kind of mentioned through the process through code enforcement with Harriman City, and this was expressed by both Brett and Mike about we want to take more of an educational approach to that resident, not an actual enforcement approach. So we give them that extra leeway, we'll give them additional time when we go out on our first inspection, and we'll either leave a door notice, a door hanger, or we'll speak with the resident and give them some time to resolve that before we go into a formal notification process. And when that process starts, they get another courtesy notice, and that process starts over again. So it buys them a little time to become compliant, but it gives them some time to work with us, and we can work with them, so hopefully we can resolve it in a voluntarily manner. So we're not, we're
trying to take the lightest approach.
Take the lightest approach to this situation.
And which extends your timeline out,
the
makes
workload.
artificially long.
Yes, we're spending time going back. So if you look at the length, the duration of the time those cases are open, a lot of that's just, going back and forth. And sometimes when you get, just experiencing just being here, you kind of get overwhelmed at sometimes, and you're trying to get back to these cases, and you can't get back to, confirm if they're compliant or not. And they'll kind of go incognito for, a week or two before you can get back there. So that kind of extends the case duration longer, which, it's not actually the case, it just reflects that in the data.
Which consequently creates more work.
Yeah, so.
It does.
So what I really want to do you asked for this presentation to come before you, but I want some clear direction. Are we going down the right path, or you want us to modify what we're doing?
So I actually have two things. One, I just looked over at Michael and said, why don't we allow ADUs in our residential areas that can handle it? So I'd like us to look at that and see if that's something that we want to consider is adding, we've allowed them into agriculture, but I think there might be some other places in the city that adding ADUs might be an appropriate use. The other issue that I see is signs, because to me, it seems like we probably have a lot of repeat offenders with signs, and that is something that gives me some pause. And I'm wondering if there's something that we can do to maybe make that enforcement slightly more effective.
Signs we probably have less tolerance for, but there are issues like people working through junk and haven't given time to work through those issues. We try to get longer. Education-wise, or repeat offender signs is pretty much moving now, or we're picking them up and you're not getting them back.
Well, and to me, I almost think that on those repeat offenders, it's almost too kind. Because at that point, they know better and they shouldn't be doing it, and they're doing it until they can get away with it, for as long as they can get away with it.
In the 20 years of history in this conversation right here, if we have less tolerance or zero tolerance on signs, you as elected official put your sign in wrong places, you'll get a citation as well. And that's why there's been some flexibility in trying to work through with them again. And then your builders and that are very sensitive about not having those signs, especially for the weekend. So if you want to take that hard line approach on the sign, have less tolerance for it, give us that clear direction. Because it will shift and come right back at you.
I think for me, I think the policy discussion needs to be had as we look at code enforcement overall. And obviously, as we have the further discussion about more work, because I think the policy discussion is again, we've heard that most things are complaint based. There are those areas that they focus on and that there's some proactive work there. But I think we would really need to have a discussion about whether we think that we're taking the right approach or whether we want to take a different approach and be more proactive on some of that stuff. And that obviously is gonna drive more work in areas that we want. So I think that policy discussion needs to be had along the way as we continue to kind of look. And I'm interested in seeing some of the other work that Michael talked about there, at least numbers and those things coming back to us so that we can really study it. But that's always, you know, the double-edged sword there when it comes to code enforcement is how much complaint-based versus proactive, those things. And you don't have to look far around, you know, the communities around us to see both sides of that coin, so.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting, like what you said, having more data to analyze, and then if you figure it out, maybe there's some ways to make things more efficient, and then we cut that down, and maybe we need a part-time person, or, you know, what I mean, something like that, but just so we understand that. And I think that there's been gaps in our coverage on code enforcement. There was a gap before you came on, I believe, right? There was a stretch we had no one, and then there was, of course, a little bit of a gap between the two of you. Just, I mean, you can't cover.
Because I switched over to
Exactly.
stormwater before he came on.
Exactly, and so I think that creates problems too, because if there's not always somebody there, then that puts you behind. You come on behind, you know, not because you didn't do it, but because there was a slight pause in between. So I think that's
One of the areas for me that I would like us to, I think, be a little personally proactive on is the encroachment issue. I think the encroachment issue is a significant issue out there with encroachment onto, you know, city property or county, whatever it may be. And those, I think, are the ones that I would like to see us be able to focus more on, because those can be significant issues that come with those.
Knowing that that's a real challenge, we didn't want Sheldon to start off with that.
Absolutely.
However, John has
Absolutely.
also been working on preparing what our approach is going to be, because the council has given us direction to resolve some of those concerns that we talked about a couple of months ago, so we will be working on that.
And the mayor's suggestion on ADUs, that's an ordinance change. And I wanna see that is that something?
I just wanna talk about it. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do right now. I just wanna have the conversation.
It will actually be raised as part of your moderate income
Yeah.
housing presentation tonight. You'll see
Oh,
that our
there we go.
consultant will raise that issue. Yeah.
You guys are ahead of us.
Another comment I would have on that is that a lot of our neighborhoods are agricultural zoned, which I'm sure you
Which
guys are
allow
aware of. So they would be a conditional use permit in those zones.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is parking and things like that, and
Yeah.
most of them, right?
One thing that, from my experience with code enforcement, one of the challenges of being proactive is being consistent. So that would be just something that I would like to throw out there to you guys, because as code enforcement, we need to be very consistent.
Absolutely.
And when we do that by complaint based, that alleviates a lot of that pressure off of us of being like, okay, well, you know, going out and measuring everybody's lawns kinds of a thing. So, yeah, so just, I was just kind of a comment.
And we'll always look at direction what you want us to do. But you know, you can really take this to a different level, and I won't name our cities, but if you park an RV in your driveway for longer than an hour, loading and unloading your travel trailer, it's too long to be cited. And so you can really get down that path that you really can't, people don't feel like they can do anything without us looking at it. So we have a softer approach, it's more of an educational approach, but if there's issues you want us to look at more closely, we will. The ordinance is there, it's how you want us to approach it in policy.
Paste a little bit.
And signs have always been in every code enforcement conference I used to go to,
Never change.
that's the name topic, and they call them snipe signs. And what's interesting, how high, they'll try to find a wood pole, see how high they can put it, just to see the code enforcement come out and understand the back of this pickup bed and they'll pull them down. And, so there's just a lot
You
of
don't say.
history there, and they'll continue to put them out. Cause it's free, quick advertisement.
Yep, even if they
And
come down.
If you've been around a while, you've had the conversation at this table or the old community center that we had about elected officials.
Yep.
And I remember one council meeting directly, two or three councils ago, we asked Director Trench, who wants to enforce it, and all we got was, keep on doing what you're doing. There was no direction, so, which means we did nothing on campaign signs.
Well, they took some down, I remember. If they were in places they weren't supposed to, they'd say, come and get them.
And the last mayor and council decided to do a little more enforcement and make sure it's out of the public right of ways, our
Yeah,
right of ways.
yeah. Park strips, those kind of things, if you hand them out to people and
And
they
then
don't know, they can't.
and I can say this last 2 election cycles, that people have been pretty good about that.
Good job.
Sometimes they don't know where they're at right
Yeah,
away,
it's just
but
educating
for the
people.
most part, and then Jackie just gives them that kindly reminder, and they go pull up and remove them and put them where they. That's actually working pretty good.
So any more questions or comments on this?
Oh, good job.
Hey guys, thank you very much for
Good
being
luck.
here, we really appreciate it, this is good information.
And I'd love to offer you to go ride with them, and there's a lot more issues out there. There's a lot of work out there.
Thanks for helping the transition.
Okay. We don't by chance have our individual for 3.3 here yet, do we?
No, let's continue to the.
Okay, we have, the next item is item 3.4. I'm gonna look to the council on this one to see if they think we're gonna have enough time to discuss this. Are you comfortable doing it now, or do you wanna wait until we come back? Cause we're most likely gonna have to regardless.
I think we got time.
Okay, item 3.4, roundtable discussion pertaining to city council policies and procedures.
Everyone's looking at
This was your item, this was your item, as I recall.
Yes, she gave
Yeah,
us
she
copies of.
Yes, I was the one that asked, for this to be placed on the agenda, and quite honestly, I thought that it would be just a very quick discussion for us, and now I'm not so sure after some of the emails, last week. And again, the main reason for me even requested on here is the fact that we are going into, having a change, on the council, with, the recent elections just concluding, and knowing that as a council, we had made some changes in how we were approaching some of the things as outlined, in the paperwork that we have in front of us. Even though it was something we all agreed on and have been practicing, I felt like that it was a good time for us to have a discussion if they were going the way as a council that we felt like they needed to continue to go, and just formalize those a little bit more so that, again, as we have a new council member come in, that there's really clarity in how we're functioning and those things that we're doing, because again, it is just a little bit different than what we have in front of us, and that was my only reason of bringing it up. Again, after some of the emails last week, as far as just, I guess, questioning timing of it and those types of things. I think Nicole said it best after after her email, when she just says, well, the fact that everyone has issues about it probably means it's time to have a discussion about it. So, and really that was, again, my intent of bringing it up, because again, I think we've been doing some things a little bit differently, but yeah, there's still some things even in here that are outlined that I think we all have agreed to in principle, but at times we're not even, I think, following these like maybe we should. And again, I think it's healthy discussion for us to make sure that we're all on the same page and all in agreements, and we have some clear directions and expectations that are set as a new member comes in, and they don't feel like that they don't know how to come in and integrate and really jump in to set them up for the best success in their new position. So that was my intent in asking for it.
And I was the second on this, and so totally agree with all that you articulated. My thinking was slightly, tangential to this in that I also wanted to discuss as part of this rules of procedure, primarily the duties and role of the mayor, and I wanted to have a little discussion on that. So if I can just go through some of the thoughts that I've had. It has been almost a year since we sanctioned the mayor for his credit card expenses and then some additional, what we deemed as a council, sort of violations with this policy. I think that this is, and my reason for bringing it up is because I have just one meeting left. And in my view, and my reason for responding to the emails was, in my mind, this was the council body that brought said sanctions to the mayor. In my view, this is the council body that ought to revisit that. You know, not bringing it to Steve, who has no background in what it is that we all dealt with. So that's what I want to discuss. Some of my thoughts are this. What I am suggesting, and what I'm hoping that we have support for, is working towards a functional city council. There is no shortage of dysfunctional city councils in the state, and everybody knows about them, and they lose opportunities, and they do not have the influence in the broader community that they should have. And we are simply hurting ourselves by continuing to foster the dysfunction that we have. I would say that a year is enough time that we start to look at bringing the mayor back into the role in which our voters, our citizens voted him into. I think it sets a very dangerous precedent when a city council circumvents the voting process, the right to vote, the very fundamental right to vote, when we no longer have reason to do that. And I am suggesting that we do not. I am saying that the mayor has paid back what he was supposed to do. I am suggesting that the mayor has done, by my knowledge, those things that we have asked him to do, and I'm specifically speaking on some of these very fundamental process elements that we have outlined. I would also suggest that some of the violations that we suggested the mayor had done are also process errors that we as city council members have also made, without being reprimanded in any way, shape, or form for those. Those would be things like speaking on behalf of the council when in fact we don't have, a majority to speak whatever that issue is. That would just be one example. So, for the good of the city, we have so many big issues to deal with, and we need a strong mayor for that. Regardless of whatever we think about each other personally, the title of mayor carries a weight that a city council title will never carry. There are reasons that in the broader community, it is the mayors that open doors and not city council members. And I am speaking truth here. So we hurt ourselves by not having a strong mayor. So that was my first thing. I have had actual conversations with developers who have said, all things being equal, they would prefer to deal with a functional city over a dysfunctional one. We have huge development issues, and that is in our city. So we have huge development issues. We do not have the best geography, regardless, for, without a 360, so we have to do it better than our neighbors. Our neighbors, with Riverton, with South Jordan, have very strong mayors. They have very good functional city councils. And we are right there and could be there. That's the point. It is a shame that we cannot get over any personal conflicts because we are all hired to do a job. And the best way to do that is to have a functional council. So, wanting to work with developers, and more importantly, developers wanting to work with us because we show that we are a functional council that can be worked with. I've talked about, and frankly, I feel this is really the fundamental element. The voters chose David as their mayor. If the voters choose to not have him as their mayor, they will choose so in the next election. Again, I go back to precedent. If this is continued beyond what is reasonable, and I would say we are at or beyond that reasonable point of punishment,
what is to prevent any city council with this form of government from taking the will of the people and changing it? You know, you could squash David's ability to do anything for his entire term. Is that what a city council should do? More importantly, is that what a city council should do when the voting body has said something entirely different? So I feel uncomfortable with that. So what I'm suggesting is simply this, and it's a baby step. I am suggesting that there are very designated committees for which the mayor is designed. That would be the Southwest Mayors Group, that would be the Conference of Mayors, and that would be the Council of Governments. My suggestion is, as a step forward, a good faith that shows that we recognize the actions that have been taken by the mayor, that we reinstate him to those 3 mayor committees, so that we start to have the functional, broader image that we need to have to do the work that we were all elected to do. That's it.
You said a couple of things there, Nicole, that actually dovetailed at least into some of my thoughts in asking again for this to be on the council, or at least spawn some more thoughts. There is probably the better way to put it. You mentioned something, and I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but something along the lines of sometimes we are guilty of doing some of the exact things that we basically called the mayor out on.
Yes.
And I do agree with your point there. As we have some of the discussions, you know, I know one of the things that we've talked about, or we talked about previously, and you brought this up as well, was, you know, the mayor attending a meeting and representing the, I guess, speaking on behalf of the city and the city council without us really having knowledge of that. And I think that was something that we all felt strongly about that happened and decided to make some changes there. But I do agree with you. I think that has happened a few times since amongst members of us, and I too, I'm uncomfortable in the fact that, honestly, if I were David, having gone through what he did go through with us, other factors aside, but some of the comments that were made and some of the changes that were made as a result, that seeing some of those same things happen, I would be extremely upset that there may be in some ways the view of a double standard there, and again, and that's really, to your point, functional council. That's exactly what I want to have us have, as a functional council that is communicating, that is involving each other in those. There are certainly times where somebody's going to reach out to one of us individually and ask for a meeting, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with us meeting with individuals, developers, whoever it is, individually to have conversations.
Well, it's against the policy.
Huh?
According to this is against.
No, exactly. My point is.
It's back to process. That's another important
It comes back to
point.
process. My point is I think that it's very different to have a conversation and rather than trying to represent the view of the council as a whole or the city as a whole, and then not taking the opportunity to come back and to loop everybody in.
Right.
And I think that that's sometimes where I've again have felt like, okay, how come it happened in this instance, or what was there something that I missed along the way? An example of that, and this is just an example, is as we talked about the Mountain Ridge development last meeting, I think it was. I got really, I guess, confused and lost a little bit in the discussion because you and Jared had referenced this another meeting that you had with the developers, but the rest of us weren't aware. And so, again, not that should happen at times, to have these additional meetings to keep those discussions going. But I think the part that was hard for me is the fact that you guys kept referencing things. I was aware of the first meeting and got a good debrief on that, but I wasn't aware of the second meeting. You kept referencing things there that the other three of us weren't aware of. And that's, I think, what we have to avoid here. I think we have to avoid the times when we don't take the opportunity to brief everybody up on those, because at the end of the day, we're all voting members, including the mayor. We all have an opportunity to be part of it, and we should want everybody to make the best informed decision when making their vote based on good information. And that's kind of where, to Nicole's point, where I do agree to some, to some extent, because regardless of, again, put everything else aside, every issue that comes before the council, the mayor is going to vote on that. Would we not want him to make a good informed decision when he makes that vote? And I'm saying we absolutely do want him to make a good informed decision, and that's why we need to make sure whatever process, again, we decide as a council, that we communicate that information to everybody, and we don't continually try to single anyone or any person out, to make sure that, again, everyone is making the best informed decision for the city when it comes time to make a decision. And I think that's kind of where, for me, having this discussion, that's really where I was coming from on it.
Sure, and I don't disagree. I guess I disagree with the idea that when we're meeting with someone that we're saying we're representing the voice of the council. We've never had that discussion. If somebody reaches out and says, "Would you please meet with us?" Okay, I'll meet with you and go sit down and listen to them. But I never have the discussion that we won't do that. Our council's not supportive of that. I might tell them, I don't like that.
Right.
But you have 4 other people you can convince. I have those conversations all the time.
And I absolutely agree with you, Sherry. I think we just need to hear that back as the rest of the council, to know what those discussions were, and to know what your feelings were in particular on it, and for us to be able to understand that, so that, again, we don't get caught in that little catch-22 where somebody tries to come up to us and say, well, Sherry said this.
It happens all the time.
And it happens all the time, and that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Right, but then the question is then, that's when every 2 weeks we come back and have these meetings that everybody airs that out. I send emails, and that's why I was tiffy, or whatever you wanna say on the other end, because I do send out emails that never get responded to, or I leave a voicemail, I never get a call back, those kinds of things, and it's like, so then it comes to a point where you're like, okay, I guess we'll just talk about it at a council meeting when everybody's sitting in the room, cause people are busy, apparently, they don't have time
And
to
I
call me
support
back.
you 100% in that as well.
So that's the thing, it's like, so what do you want the policy to be, that every time we have a conversation with somebody else, what should the policy be? We send it out, nobody responds, what do you wanna do? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do,
That's the first-
absolutely.
that's the
In
first
my
part.
mind, in my mind, that is briefing. You know, you can't make someone read or respond, but if you pushed it out there, and when I was saying speaking for the council, I wasn't referring to any of the developer meeting. I just think in general, that has happened, but I wasn't pointing to anything with that.
Yeah, and
So,
I wasn't trying to say
I wasn't calling out
that
specific.
you guys were doing that.
Cause I think
The
that's
impression
something-
is sometimes that obviously is going to be taken is, well, I had 2 council members there, and this is
Yeah.
what they said, that they're gonna take it that way, and that's why it's so important for us
Yeah.
to communicate, and I think that we've started to drop off. We're busy, we're swamped, we all know that, but I think that
And we've been down a man, which is again,
Yeah.
part of my point here is, you know, you can only be stretched so thin with committees. And in my mind, it is time to have the clean slate, or at least work towards a clean slate, so that I am, and this is one of the things that just truly is important to me. I want to walk away having done my part to build this council in a more functional framework. So that is really what I am looking for, is some level of nod or not, if you don't agree. But again, I just think that remedies were made for the expenses. It has been nearly a year, and I just think now is the time to bring David back in the fold, have him on those committees that are mayor-oriented, that makes perfect sense, and then it's not my problem anymore. You as a council can determine how the mayor is doing with the added responsibility. I'm not asking to touch pay, I'm not asking to touch anything but those very specific, broad committee assignments that are designed for a mayor, and that we are being hurt because our mayor is not there.
I guess I just take exception to one thing, and I don't mean to have my back to you on this, but
No, it's
I'll
fine.
say it to everybody, is that you keep saying about the money, and it was so much more than that. So
No, I'm saying
I-
that was a remedy, and then I'm saying some of the other infractions are infractions that we ourselves have also done. So if we were to look at some of those, and yes, there's other things, but when is enough? When is enough punishment enough?
Yeah,
When do
I
you
hear
start to give opportunities for improvement? I say now is the time. It is fairly innocuous to have our mayor sit on mayor committees. And I would say, why not?
So I do have a disagreement, especially like on the South Valley mayor one, just because there's been so much work that has gone into that. We talked a little while ago about planning commission and how important is just that longevity. And I think it shoots us in the foot to replace the person who's been working on that for so many months and spent so many hours on that. I think it would be more harm than good for us at that point to replace that position.
What if, and this is a thought that I had, because two of those that you mentioned, the Conference of Mayors and Council of Governments, two of those are currently ones that I'm representing us on and attending. No, and that's
Hold
fine.
those away from you?
No, the thought that I had when doing that is I agree with you, Sherry, that consistency and the knowledge, the institutional knowledge definitely is there. And I'm not gonna speak, obviously, for Jared on that particular, body there, but I think it's something that could dovetail into at least what my thought was, and maybe, at least for the initial, maybe we attend to those meetings together. And again, allow for some of that institutional knowledge to stay there, and then we can revisit that again a few months down the road. Whatever it is, as a council, we determine to see again if it's, because it's never, and I think that Brett and Tammy do a good job of pushing out the meetings that are there, because it's never gonna hurt to have more than one of us attend any of those meetings. I think that's only gonna help our cause in some cases to have better representation. So another set of ears there to hear the conversation, the dialogue, and to help that dialogue be translated back to this body here. So, again, in terms of COM and COG, I would say that, if you're amenable to it, then I would say, let's attend those together for the next little while. And
I have no problem with that.
and just, and start, you use the word, baby step or a step, whatever you wanna call it, but I think that that's a step in the right direction.
And I will just speak, if I could, to Sherry's comments on the Southwest mayors. Again, I will go back to the fact that David did in fact serve on that committee for several months as it got started, so he has that institutional knowledge to a degree. And where Jared has briefed all of us on the things that are happening, I think we're all relatively up to speed. I would say this, that is designed again to be a Southwest mayors group. And I do feel perception matters, and when in that group you have two that are mayors and one that is not, it says something about the function, or in this case, the lack of function within your city council. We all get up to speed on committees. I left the UFA board, Jared jumped on in and he figures it out. There's no reason, again, if we are truly in the space of bringing David back into the functional fold, that he cannot at least handle that in similar fashion where he and Jared attend together with the obvious goal of that being the mayor's committee, which it's intended to be, or he attend alone. So I would still say those are the three most obvious, and I think just obvious, easy enough steps to take to show good faith in wanting to get back to a functional nature. So.
I also feel like it's a discussion that Jared should be a part of. I don't think that decision should be made without him. If you want to talk about a functional council and all of us going forward together, I think that's important. I also think that we have one more meeting of this council, and then it's a different council, and it feels like that council should have weigh in on that too, because we all have to be functional together. And there is knowledge of things that went on, and so there's a perception already of moving forward. And your point about that he was elected to do that, that's correct, and I don't disagree with that. However, he was also asked to resign by many people too, so.
He was asked to resign by some people.
Yeah,
And that's true, and if they do not want him to be mayor, we will find out at the next election if he chooses to run.
Understand, so I guess, I understand your principle behind what you're saying, but, I think that there should be weigh-in by Jared also. I also think that there should be weigh-in by, Steve, the new council member.
I agree that we'll have plenty of time to have this conversation when Steve takes office in January, because that's what we should be doing as a council anyways. I guess my comment to that is I believe the conversation is relevant, just as relevant today as it will be when Steve takes office. I don't think that just because we have a new person coming in, that it means that we're going to do things drastically different than we are today.
Right.
And so, I don't necessarily agree with the notion that was brought up before that we should wait to have this conversation. Because again, I don't think that we still have work to do now, and I don't think that we're going to change drastically how we're doing things as a council today versus how we are when the new council member comes in. So I think it's a relevant discussion no matter when you have it. Whether you have somebody that has one meeting left or you have somebody who's just at the front end of a 4-year term, I think that conversation is always gonna be relevant and we'll have the opportunity to have it. I think that obviously there needs to be some continued discussion with Jared. I agree, we can't make a decision without, but that being said, obviously we put this on the agenda, expecting full well that everybody would be here, and we understand that things come up and things happen to where sometimes people can't, but I don't think that we should try and schedule things around that either. I think we have to keep things moving forward, we have to put them on an agenda, we have to deal with them to keep things moving, realizing that sometimes something's gonna come up and I might not be able to be part of the discussion, or you might not. Should we have continued discussion? Absolutely, but for me today, I'm willing to take those steps that I outlined as far as we don't have to make a decision on the Southwest mayors. I believe that there's a path forward to be able to involve both of them. I think Jared's passionate about it, absolutely, and he wants to stay involved in it. But again, I'm willing to, on my side of things, to say, let's attend those 2 meetings together for the next little while and we'll have a continued discussion about that moving forward. Because one of the things that we've talked about through all of this is just behavior and some of those things. And this gives us an opportunity to go to these meetings, interact, observe behavior, and let us know whether or not there's been corrections made to do some of the things that we asked a year ago. And the answer is either gonna be yes or no, and then we move forward from there.
Right. And I respect Jared's work on the Southwest mayor, so I'm perfectly happy to give a nod to what you're saying, which is dual attendance at the Conference of Mayors in COG with further discussion when Jared's available at our next meeting. I think that's only fair.
Again, my sole desire, and I think Nicole captured it best, my sole desire. Yeah.
I'm not an advocate.
Yeah. My sole desire is functionality amongst the council. That's my sole desire, to make sure that we are talking, we're communicating, we're educating each other, so that when we have to go in there before, in the formal meeting, and to make a decision, that we're all making the best informed decision we can. And we can only do that if we agree to say this is, in principle, how we're gonna do things, and that we communicate that information back to each other.
I agree to that 100%, but I can tell you this for a fact, that, almost never, Brett, do you call me very often and I don't either answer or call you right back? Almost never would I get a call from any of you and not call you right back or make sure I get right back in contact with you. So if
I believe I can say the same thing.
Right, well, but I'm just saying, so if someone has an issue, if you're like, that was really frustrating to me, just pick up the phone and say, Sherry, that really frustrated me, that I got in that situation and you hadn't communicated that to me. Cause then the behavior can be corrected immediately. So I could go, oh, sorry, I should have sent that out. Do you see what I'm saying? Rather than have it be irritating to where we have to discuss policy and procedure, it's simple, just say, you should have let me know, that irritated me. Cause even though I've been in this almost 2 years, it's like sometimes you just go, oh.
You're busy.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
We're busy.
So if there's something like that, I would just say, nip it in the bud at first, just pick up the phone and
No,
say, that's irritating.
I agree, and honestly, the example I used was not something that stayed with me. But it did make me think that it was probably time for us to have a discussion like this. As simple as that.
I think it's unfortunate and good the way meetings have to run. You know, I mean, it's like because we want people transparency, we want people to be aware of the meetings. But unfortunately, we get to meet together very few times where we can all sit and talk. We can't just all have, you know, one big conversation and decide that something outside of a public meeting, so
Right.
that's tough. But I also think it's helpful to be more and more involved with other meetings. I think it's good for us to have some meetings with a developer, so we don't waste staff's time, because if they know, yeah, sorry, I'm a no, go ask the rest, or whatever, you know what I mean?
I agree.
But, and I think, you know, we had a meeting with the school board the other day, and I popped out an idea I had with them, but I was also careful there to say, hey, what would you think about this? I'm just catching you here, I don't know how the rest of council feels about it,
And I
but,
think that's,
you know, those.
I think that's what we have to do.
I think they are too, and so that was my concern about this
No.
meeting, was I was like, I hope this isn't what it's about, because I think that the more we can be a resource to get those things through, because just like you were saying, if a staff goes, and these guys are awesome people,
Yes, they are.
but if an elected official shows up, it just changes the game a little bit, you know what I mean? And whether it should or not, it doesn't, your knowledge might be this and their knowledge might be this, but it doesn't matter because you're the elected official on that. So I think that that's helpful to drag us
Agreed.
along as much as we can,
And,
or have us
and I
be involved.
absolutely did not want the discussion to be taken as
Okay.
that, so. Because I think that's what we have to do. We get in these meetings and we have conversations, and that does spark ideas and things, and we should be able to, what do you think about this? And create that dialogue, because that's when we end up with better products, better information.
Yeah.
And the more that we have the opportunity to do that and communicate that back to each other, the better off we're gonna be.
Can we give David just a minute since we're talking about him?
I've tried to be quiet, I mean, in all honesty, it's been a tough year for all of us. I would be lying if I said it, this hasn't been one of the most stressful years of my life. And I have a lot of that falls on my own shoulders. At the same time, you know, I've stuck around because I want to do good by the residents that elected me, and I signed up for 4 years, and I intend to do the best I can with what time I have. And so, you know, one of the things I told Clint a year ago was, you know, I hope that we can remain kind to each other, and that, you know, that kindness will help us become more functional and be more effective as a council. And so, I take the nod, the baby step as an important step, and as something that I think it's important that, you know, I have a role to fill, and that role, you know, is to make sure that I'm communicating with the other members of this council and being an asset, not being a distraction, which I know I have been in the past. And so I look forward to taking any steps I can, and I don't want it to be a messy process. I want it to be something that we can step out in the next 2 years and show, you know, the elected leaders around the state that we are a force to be reckoned with, and that we're gonna do right by our residents and move forward.
One last comment, that is because our form of government is a 5-member council. And that's how we need to function, is a 5-member council. Helping each other, communicating with each other, so that we can all try and make the best informed decisions for our community moving forward, so.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we
Motion
have.
to adjourn to our regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.